page 906, verse number 25. Vayom Hashem al Moshe lemor, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe like this: "So'es rosh malkoach hashvi ba'odam u'b'behema," that you have to work out exactly what was taken. Ata ve'elazar kohen v'roshei avoy sa'idah. So what's going to happen? Verse number 27. V'chotziso es ha-malkoach bein toisei ha-milchama yotzim l'tzava. That half is going to be, that you're going to split the spoils up into half. Half is going to go to the ones that went out to war. Uvein kol ha'eda, and the other half is going to be given out to everybody. Which means that the people who took upon themselves the volunteer, whatever it was, but the ones who took upon themselves the danger of going out into battle, they were going to get considerably more than everybody else. From what? So what's going to happen is like this, that some of what they've received is going to be separated, and it's going to be given over, some of that is going to be given over to Elazar the Kohen. The rest of what was given out, so they're also going to have to take a certain percentage and they have to give it to the Leviim. Shomrei Mishmeres Mishkan Hashem. Like, why is that? Because the Leviim are the ones who don't have a source of income for themselves. They're the spiritual role models of the Jewish people. They're the ones who are there in order to allow the Jewish people access to spiritual realms, and therefore the Jewish people have to support them instead. V'yas Moshe v'Elazar kohen kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. And then it goes through a whole thing over here. It goes through exactly how much was taken and how much was given. We're not going to go through it all, but the bottom line is that a lot was taken and a lot was given out. And what is interesting is the fact that the Kohanim are going to be taken care of and the Leviim are going to be taken care of, which means that inside of the Jewish nation, you've got this concept of looking after the spiritual dimensions have to be looked after by the physical dimension. I don't know if you're familiar with this idea. Two of the tribes, Yisachar and Zvulun, had a pact between them, a contract between them, that Yisachar were the ones who sat down and learned. Zvulun were the ones who went out and they were very successful businessmen, and Zvulun supported Yisachar physically, materialistically, and Yisachar supported Zvulun spiritually, which means there's a balance between the two. Each one is complementing what the other one doesn't have. Each one is giving that in order to allow each tribe to continue on the way that it needs to continue in the best possible way. So now we're gonna flip over to page 910. We're going to do something now. We're going to come across something which is really a rather strange dialogue that's going to take place. We'll take a look, but it's to do with going into the land of Israel. So, starting from chapter 32, verse number 1, Umiknei Rav, Aya livnei Reuven, livnei God, Otzim Ma'od. There were two tribes that had an awful lot of flocks, they had an awful lot of livestock, and they were concerned. What was their concern? The concern was that they were going to go into the land of Israel. The land of Israel is not a very large area. They've got a lot of flocks, and they don't know where they're going to pasture all of their flocks. So they have an idea. Right now, where are the Jewish people? On the eastern banks, right on the other side of the Jordan right now, waiting to go in. So they have this incredible idea on the other side of the Jordan. It's very fertile over there. It's very vast amounts of land over there. Plenty of space for them to be able to graze their cattle and their flocks easily. So they come with an idea to Moshe that they should be allowed to stay on that side of the Jordan.
Even though it's out of Israel.
Even though it's outside of Israel. Yeah, we'll have a look and see. So, v'yiru es eretz Yazev v'es eretz Gilad v'nei mokoi mikneh, that the place we're in right now, this is land which is really, really suited for pasture land. It's really suited for grazing, your livestock, and they're very excited about the idea of being able to stay over there. So what happens? Let's take a look and see. Verse number 2. We've got to see there's a whole dialogue that's going to take place over here that needs to be understood carefully. V'yavoyu b'nei God u'v'nei Reuven So the tribes of Gad and the tribes of Reuven, they came. And they came in front of Moshe and Elazar and in front of the princes of the tribes, and they make their pitch like this. Atarot v'divon v'yazer v'nimro v'cheshbon v'eloleh u'shvom u'navoi u'v'oin. These are all cities. Ha'oretz ha'shehika Hashem lifnei adas Yisrael eretz miknehi. This land is wonderful pasture land over here. And we've got a lot of flocks. We've got a lot of livestock. Okay, you can hear where the conversation is going. Yeah? If we found favor in your eyes, we would like the land to be given to us as this should be our heritage. Instead of taking land in the land of Israel proper, we want to be given land over here. That way we can be given a lot more land than we would have had otherwise, and we'll have plenty of space for our livestock. Al tavirenu sayadin. Don't take us over the Jordan. We don't want to go in together with everyone else. So far the question is clear, right? What they're asking for is clear.
Yeah, but there'll be chutz la'aretz.
Okay, so they'll be in chutz la'aretz. So they know perfectly well that what they're doing is that they're giving up quality for quantity. They understand that. Let's have a look at verse number 6. Let's see Moshe's reaction is very, very sharp. Vayomer Moshe livnei Gad v'livnei Reuven. So Moshe turns to Bnei Gad and to Bnei Reuven, to these two tribes. Acheichem yavo lemilchoma v'atem teishvu poi. He says, are you for real? Your brothers are going to go into, they've got to go conquer the land, right? Which means that your brother's going to go into war on the other side of the Jordan, and you're going to stay over here? That's what you're suggesting? V'lama tini'un es leiv b'nei Yisrael me'avor el ha'oretz asher nosan lehem Hashem. You know, what you're doing, it's going to demoralize everybody. Everybody's going to see what? They're going off to war in order to conquer the land of Israel. And you people are staying over here in this beautiful land over here, and you're not doing anything whatsoever. It's going to be very demoralizing. And you're going to demoralize them against taking control of the land that God's given them. Right? So far, that's pretty sharp. It's going to get even sharper. Listen to this. Verse number 8. This is exactly what your forefathers did. When the spies got sent into the land of Israel, and they went and they saw the beautiful land, and they came back and they said terrible things, so that the people couldn't go into the land that God had given them. And God became very angry on that day. That none of those people that left Egypt between the ages of 20 and 60 are going to go, they're not going to go into the land of Israel. None of the men are going to go into the land of Israel. Because they didn't follow me. Bilti Kalev ben Yefuna Haknizi Yoshua bin Nun, with the exception, of course, of Kalev and Yoshua, because those are the two people that came back with the good impressions of the land, and they tried to tell everybody that it was the right place to go to. Ki milu acharei Hashem, because they followed Hashem. Vayicharaf Hashem b'Yisrael, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't get angry just with the spies; He got angry with everybody. V'ani'em b'midbar aboim shana. That's why we've been wandering around here in the desert for the last 40 years. Ad-toim kol ador yisei Rabbi Hashem, until that whole generation has been wiped out. That whole generation has been killed. Verse number 14. V'hinei kamtem tachas avoseichem tarbus anashim chatoim. Listen to these words, right? You've risen up in the place. You've done exactly what they did, and you've created a culture of sin. Lispois oid al charoin Hashem. Yisrael, and you're going to bring more anger on the Jewish people from God. What's going to happen? You're going to cause the destruction of the Jewish people. Well, we need to try to understand something over here, right? I mean, seriously, what should Moshe Rabbeinu should have done? If he wants them to go into the land of Israel, so he should have told them, no, you got to come in with everybody else, right? And if it's okay for them to live on the other side of the Jordan and he's just upset that they offered to go in without bothering to offer a fight together with the rest of the Jewish people, so he should have just told them that, no? He should have said, okay, you can have this side of the Jordan, but you have to come in and you have to fight together with everybody else. Why is Moshe's reaction? First of all, Moshe's reaction is completely out of character. You hear what he just told them? He told them, you people are doing exactly what the spies just did. You people are a bunch of no-goods. You're a bunch of bums. The spies brought death and destruction on the Jewish people.
But he told them like it is. I mean, says you're going to go against God. You're the history of your fathers. I mean, he's telling you like it is. I don't think that's such a...
It's very, very sharp language. That's the problem over here.
The whole idea of separation to begin with,
right?
There's not a whole lot they can do once they make it appear that these people really hadn't even thought of that. Like it wasn't an important part of their decision.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, right? They've traveled together for the last 40 years through the desert as a cohesive unit, and yet these people are coming along and they're saying, "What? We don't want to be a part of this anymore."
But are they doing it because they don't want to be a part of it, or because they needed fields?
So here it's interesting. We see Moshe Rabbeinu's reaction. He doesn't censure them for not wanting to be together with the rest of the Jewish people. Right? What does he censure them for? First of all, the most overwhelming thing over here is that they're taking away the motivation of the Jewish people to go into the land of Israel and conquer it. Yeah? That seems to be the most, that's the thing that he places the most amount of emphasis on, is the idea that you're doing exactly what the spies did all those years ago. What did the spies do? The spies came back and they took the wind out of the sails of the Jewish people. The Jewish people thought they were going into the land of Israel, right? And the spies came along and said, you know what, it's a great place, but it's not for us. And then at that point, everybody says, you know what, well, maybe we shouldn't be going there. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets angry. Then God gets angry, right? So Moshe's anger over here is directed towards, if we were Moshe, right? If we were trying to work out over here, I think we would all say what you just said, right? Which is the real terrible thing over here is that they want to break away from the Jewish people. They want to have their own little section on the other side of the Jordan. And what, you're not part of the Jewish people? Is that what you're trying to say? But it's interesting, Moshe doesn't really say that. Moshe's emphasis over here is on the impact that it's going to have on the rest of the Jewish people. So first of all, we have to learn something interesting over here. First of all, we have to see that their request to stay on the other side of the Jordan is not as crazy as it sounds. It's not that they're cutting themselves off from the Jewish people, and it's not that they're cutting themselves off from the land of Israel either. There's some connection over here, right? The land on the other side of the Jordan River belongs to the greater land of Israel, which means it's not that they're standing in a place which doesn't have any of the holiness of the land of Israel. It does. It's not an integral part of it right now. So when they come to Moshe Rabbeinu, the only thing that's fueling them, their desire, the only thing that's interesting them is the land. There's plenty of land over here. But Moshe's looking at a different detail. If you people stay over here, then you're going to cause a demoralization of the rest of the Jewish people. And that's no good.
They also had the most livestock, right? Didn't they?
They had a lot of livestock, yeah. You should know, interestingly enough, you should know that when it says it in the Medrash, it says that when God and Reuven went into the land of Israel, with the conquering of the land of Israel, they went in, at the head of the army they went. But when they went into the land of Israel and they saw the quality of the land of Israel, they were sorry that they made the deal that they made. Because even though they got an awful lot more on the other side of the Jordan, they got an awful lot more acreage, but the land itself was of lesser quality. Here, let's have a look and see their reaction. Verse number 16. Vayikshu elav vayomru. So they approach Moshe. Okay, they move away from Moshe. They've got their tails between their legs. They realize that they've done something they shouldn't have done, and now they're ready to go back, and they're going to make another pitch over here. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make pens for our barns, for our livestock. And we're going to make cities for our children. And we are going to go at the head of the army. Not only, listen to what they're offering. Not only are they going to go into the land of Israel and help conquer the land of Israel, but they're going to stay there until when? Until everybody's in their place. You hear? Which means they're not just offering to go in and fight the battles, and as soon as the battle is over and they've conquered the land of Israel that they're going to go, but they're going to stay there longer in order to make sure every tribe has got their own portion and everyone's settled, and then they're going to go back to where they came from. And we're going to leave our children are going to be left in fortified cities. We're not going to go back to our homes until everybody's in their place. Right? We're not going to take over our land until everyone's taken over their land. Is that okay now? Huh?
So they still want to stay on the other side.
They haven't changed their minds.
So
They just changed their offer, right?
Okay, so what happens to the land that was...
It was given out to the other tribes instead. Every tribe got a little bit more.
Would there have been, like, in the planning of this, like cities of refuge and everything else? Like,
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
Really?
It was established by Moshe before. Yeah, I just want to know, without peeking any further, which nobody seems to be doing anyway, right? But without peeking any further, tell me, are things okay now? The bottom line is right now, the way that we, right, Moshe says to them, you can't do what you're doing because you're going to demoralize the Jewish people. What do? They come back with a counteroffer. They say, you know what, no, Moshe Rabbeinu, that's not what we meant. We're happy to set up shop over here on the other side of the Jordan, but we will go into the land of Israel together with everybody else. We'll go at the front of the army. We'll stay there, not just until the end of the conquering of the land of Israel, but until everybody's settled down and been taken care of, and then we'll go back. At this point, what should Moshe Rabbeinu's reaction be? Good, fine, okay, sounds okay to me, right? Let's have a look and see. Obviously, it's not going to be like that. If you do what I tell you to do, if you go out in front of God to the war, and you stay there until all of the enemies have been defeated, and you wait until everything has been done, and you'll notice over here, he keeps talking about Lifnei Hashem, everything's been done Lifnei Hashem, and you stay there until it's all been taken care of, then you can have the land that you're talking about. And if you don't do that, you have sinned in front of God, right? What's going to be if you don't do that? Then you're going to end up having to pay for the sin that you've just sinned. And then he says to them, "Benu lachem orim letapchem ugderos letzonachem." You should build cities for your children, and you should build pens for your livestock. Vayotze mipichem ta'asu, and then that's what you need to do. Now, hold on a second, right? Is Moshe telling them to do anything that they didn't say they were going to do? You have to take into account over here that this is not like a storybook. Which means that when Moshe says what he says, he's not just repeating what they've said. He's now making a counter offer to what they've just offered. The question over here is, do we see a difference between the two?
They have a better idea of the consequences of not keeping their word.
Good. Okay. So if what you were saying, if it was simply a case of letting them know that they have to stand by what they've said, so we can cut out everything, right? And we can go straight down to verse number 23, which is that Moshe could say, okay, and if you don't do what you're going to say, then you've sinned in front of God. We don't need Moshe telling us all over again what it is that they've just said they're going to do anyway, no? You hear the problem over here?
But he's obviously okaying to live out close.
He's okaying living across the other side of the Jordan, right? He's giving them the okay not to be inside of Eretz Yisrael proper, but he's making conditions over here which are very difficult for us to be able to pinpoint. So let's go back. The first time, what did they say? They said that they want to stay on the side of the Jordan. What does Moshe Rabbeinu say? There's no way that you can do that. What are you going to do? You're going to stay here and everyone else is going to go in, and that's not fair. So they say, no, hold on a second. We will set up pens and barns for our livestock, and we'll build cities for our children, and then we're going to go in front of the army and we're going to conquer the land of Israel together with you, and we're going to stay there until the whole process is finished. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu, here's what they says. He's not happy with that. Why not? Because the first thing they put first, normally when you speak, under normal circumstances, what you say first is normally the thing that you're emphasizing the most. Right? So when they say that they'll build first pens for their livestock, and then they'll build cities for their children, what are they putting the emphasis on?
The physical livestock.
The livestock, right? The livestock, their flocks and their cattle. And Moshe Rabbeinu is very unhappy to hear that. Why? Because it doesn't matter how much flocks you've got, it doesn't matter how much cattle you've got. What's the most important thing? The most important dimension in your life is what? Your children. That's the continuity, right? Which means what they should have said is they would have realized what they were doing, and they would have realized that they had the emphasis. If it was the right way around, what they should have done is they should have said like this: we'll build cities for our children, and we'll build pens for our livestock, and then we're going to go out and we're going to fight with everybody else. So Moshe Rabbeinu is very upset because he hears over here that the tribes of Gad and Reuven are caught up inside of the physical, the physicality, the materialistic, dimensions that they're living inside of, and he's very upset with them. So let's read Moshe's response again. Vayomer, verse number 20. Vayomer le Moshe im ta'asun es hadavar hazeh. This is the way you're going to do it. Listen to me. Im teichaltzu lifnei Hashem lemilchama. If you go out in front of God to the war, va'avar lachem kol chalutzes hayadin lifnei Hashem, and you do all of this in front of God, ad harishoes oivav mipanav, and you get rid of all of the enemies, v'nich b'sharetz lifnei Hashem, and you conquer the land lifnei Hashem, in front of God again, v'achat tashuvu v'yisem nekiim me'Hashem u'miyisrael, and then you can go back to the other side of the Jordan. Hear what Moshe is doing? He's giving them what's called, in yeshiva language, he's giving them a little mussar shmooze. He's telling them in a very subtle way. He's telling them that you people you've got it all wrong. You really do. You imagine that what's important is your cattle and your flock. That's not right. What's important is the continuity of Klal Yisrael. What is that? That's the children. You've got it all wrong. All of this is being done lifnei Hashem. Everything has to be done in front of God. Not because you've got cattle and you've got flocks. Therefore, you should have more land and you should stay on the other side of the Jordan. Then you can have it as an inheritance. But if you don't do it like that, then you can't have it. It says in the Medrash, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the tribes of Gad and Reuven. Listen to this. He's telling them that if you don't want to do it my way, then you can't have the land on the other side of the Jordan, and you'll have to come into the land of Israel with everybody else. Yeah, it's a big punishment, right? It's very, very sharp language over here. He's saying that if you don't do it my way, then you're sinning in front of God, and the sin is going to catch up with you. Verse number 24, listen to what Moshe tells them. Banu lachem arim letapchem. What comes first?
Children.
Children, right? Build the cities for your children. Ugderot letzanachem, and then you can build pens for your livestock. You hear? Moshe is spelling it out very clearly over here. Vayotze b'pichem tasu. Verse number 25. Let's see what their reaction is. Vayomer b'nei Gad u'b'nei Reuven el Moshe leimor, avadecha yasu kasher Adoni mitzaveh. We will do exactly what you've told us to do. Verse number 26, very important. Tapenu, nashenu, miknenu v'chol be'emtenu, yusham ba'orei Gilad. What's the emphasis over here? Right? Our children, our wives, our cattle, all of that's going to stay on the other side, right? But what are they saying? What are they? They finally picked up on the message that they're being given. What's the message? Children. Children are more important than cattle. We're going to go out in front of God into this war. Kasher Adoni Dover. And that's the way exactly the way that you've said. So here, we spoke about this the other day, right? The idea of being materialistically successful, of being physically successful, is not something which goes contrary to Judaism. We just got to learn how to use it properly. We've got to learn how to be able to juggle our material success to make sure that we're going to be able to continue growing in the spiritual dimensions as well. That was what Gad and Reuven, that's what they missed out the first time around. They didn't realize that. And Moshe explains to them that what they're doing is wrong. So one last thing before we go off further. If anybody here knows the order of the tribes, who was born first, so who's the firstborn tribe? Reuven. And it's very telling that over here, from the beginning of the whole dialogue, back on page 910, at the beginning of chapter 32, it says, "Umiknei Rav haya livnei Reuven v'livnei Gad atzum ma'od." They had a huge amount of flocks. Who had a huge amount of flocks? Bnei Reuven u'bnei Gad. The tribes of Reuven and the tribes of Gad. Yeah? Verse number 2, "Vayavoyu bnei Gad u'bnei Reuven." Who came to speak to Moshe? Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. You know, in order for things to remain symmetrical, in order for them to remain in an orderly fashion, what should verse number 2 have said? Vayovu Bnei Reuven or Bnei Gad. Why is it being a switch? And you'll see all the way through from now on, it's going to talk about Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. It's not going to talk about Bnei Reuven and Bnei Gad. Only once does it talk about it in the right order at the beginning.
Why I think that maybe it just reinforces the whole idea that they didn't have it right in the first place.
Okay. One possibility is what? You've got the younger one talking up in front of the older one, which is an indication of what? That they've got their priorities have lost their balance somewhere along the line. They're not working properly. Yeah. Like really, Bnei Reuven should have preceded Bnei Gad because they're the older tribe and they're considered to be the more, they're more, I don't know, more how are we going to describe this? More senior, right? In the Medrash, it says something else altogether. In the Medrash, it says like this, that Bnei Reuven and Bnei Gad actually had two different reasons why they wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan. Bnei Reuven wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan because they had a lot of crops that had to be taken care of. A lot of cattle that had to be taken care of. They had a lot of livestock, and they needed the space. Bnei Gad also had a lot of livestock, but the motivating factor by them to want to stay on the other side of the Jordan was what? Because that's where Moshe Rabbeinu was going to be buried. They didn't want to leave Moshe Rabbeinu. They wanted to stay together with him. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu is going to die, but he's going to be buried over there. He can't go into the land of Israel, and he's going to be buried over there. And Bnei Gad wanted to remain over there. What's the problem? Bnei Gad can't come to Moshe and say, listen, Moshe, we know that you're going to die over here, and we don't want to go into the land of Israel and leave you over here by yourselves. So they joined together with the tribe of Reuven with this idea that they want to stay on the other side because they've got a lot of flocks. they're using the abundance of cattle and livestock that they've got. They're using that as an excuse to be able to stay on the other side of the Jordan, but that's not their real reason. Their real reason is they want to stay with Moshe. What's the problem? This is a very, very sensitive subject for Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu begs and pleads to be allowed to go into the land of Israel, and at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not let him. He won't let him go in. So they know that if they come to Moshe Rabbeinu and they say, Moshe, you're going to die over here and you're going to be buried on this side of the Jordan, they know that it's going to cause him anguish. They know that it's going to cause him a lot of sorrow. So what do? They come up, they join together with the tribe of Reuven, and they use the same excuse that they're using. But that's why at the beginning it says, Miknei Rabbi Livnei Reuven Livnei Gad. It's following the regular order. But when it comes to trying to convince Moshe Rabbeinu that they should stay on the other side of the Jordan River, who's got more of a vested interest in wanting to stay there? Bnei Gad. They just can't say why. Which is why there's a flip in the order. All of a sudden it talks about Bnei Gad before Bnei Reuven, because they're the ones that are pushing harder than Bnei Reuven. They've got an even greater motivating factor to want them to stay on that side of the Jordan River, even greater than that of Reuven.
I don't understand God, but Reuven wasn't he the one that, when it came to selling Yosef, he went on his own.
Yeah.
There's something, the same thing here or something. I mean, it's something that he wants to always be excluded.
I don't know, it's interesting. I've never thought about it like that. It's an interesting idea. For some reason, whatever. I mean, the emphasis is like this, that by Yosef, so over there, Reuven is praised for what he did, because he was the only one who went against what everyone else was saying when they tried to, they wanted to sell him and they wanted to kill him and everything they wanted to do over there.
But he left the pit.
Right, he wouldn't stay with him.
So it gives you like...
I don't know, it's interesting. See, over here, I'm not familiar with a source that... I'm familiar with a source which says that they shouldn't have done what they did because the quality of the land of Israel was greater than the quality of the land outside of the land of Israel, even though they got much more. But I'm not familiar with a source which says that what they asked for was incorrect. We don't see anywhere Moshe Rabbeinu censuring the tribe of Reuven and the tribe of Gad for wanting to stay on that side of the Jordan and not go into the land of Israel.
As a matter of fact, he tells them, if you do all these things, you can go back.
Yeah, which means that, it seems that he's quite prepared to let them do that. We don't see him trying to tell them, look, guys, you can do it if you want to do it, but it's not a great idea. Again, one of the reasons for that is, like I mentioned before, Mitzvah Hashem, when the Mashiach comes, he should come very, very soon, right? But when the Mashiach comes, then that whole tract of land is going to be incorporated into the land of Israel, and retroactively it's all going to be a part, right? It'll all be one large land, which is going to be the land of Israel. Here, let's flip over the page to 914. Vayitzav lehem Moshe es Elazar Kohen v'es Yoshua bin Nun. Now listen what Moshe is doing over here. Moshe is making sure, to the best of his ability, he's making sure that they don't renege on this deal. So what does he do? In front of Elazar Kohen, who's going to be the Kohen to go into the land of Israel, and in front of Yoshua bin Nun, who's going to be the leader that's going to take them into the land of Israel, and all of the leaders that are going to be part of the leadership that's going to go into the land of Israel. Says Moshe like this in verse number 29. Vayomer Moshe aleihem im yavru bnei Gad u'bnei Reuven itchem es hayad en kol chalutz milchama lifnei Hashem v'nichbasha haaretz lifneichem. That if they go into the land of Israel like they said they're going to, lifnei Hashem, and they do everything they're supposed to do, unasatem lehem es eretz gilad la'achuzah, then they can have the land that they're talking about. Ve'im lo yavru chalutzim itchem then otherwise they're going to have to go into the land of Israel with you.
So he's telling him, but it's more like it's more like a negative, and if they don't do it, we'll have to go to Israel. So he's telling him that's a punishment. I mean,
yeah, it's interesting. That's the way it sounds, right? It sounds like the ultimate punishment. They're going to have to go to the land of Israel, right? Is that what he means? Sure, he doesn't mean it as a punishment. What he means is that if you are not prepared to understand that everything that we're doing now is lifnei Hashem, then that means that you've got to stay together with everybody else in the land of Israel, because otherwise things are going to spiral out of control.
Was Hashem satisfied with this arrangement?
We don't see anything with HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying that it's no good. And what we do see is that when the exile of the Jewish people took place, the first tribes that were exiled were the tribes of Gad and Reuven, because they were the ones that were on the other side of the Jordan. Which means that there is a certain, there is a certain sense of a midah keneged midah over here, a certain sense of a measure for measure, that the first tribes to go into exile were the tribes that didn't want to go into the land of Israel. But that's much, much later on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I read somewhere, when they would form it like battle formation, and the Dan were on the flanks, the rear, it was God that was always on the front lines. They were the ones, the first,
right,
in line.
In they went, right, because they're living up to their end of the deal. What's interesting over here, though, is that if you take a look, verse number 29, what does it say? Vayomer Moshe aleim, this is what he says to them. Im yavru v'nei Gad u'v'nei Reuven. You would have expected Moshe Rabbeinu to use the correct order, no? To say the tribe of Reuven and the tribe of Gad. But Moshe is also picking up over here. I don't think Moshe understands I don't think right now he understands the motivation of Gad to want to stay on the other side of the Jordan, but he understands there's something more here than just the desire to have space for the livestock. And that's why he puts Bnei Gad in front of Bnei Reuven. V'ya'anu Bnei Gad u'Bnei Reuven le'mor. Verse number 31. This is how they answer. Exactly what you said, that's what we'll do. We're going to go over the land, into the land of Israel. And we're going to leave our how do you say nachle? Our inheritance on the other side of the Jordan. וייתן להם מוישה לפני גד ובני ראובן ולחצי שבט מנשה בן יוסף אס ממלכת סיחון מלך האמורי ויש ממלכת אוג מלך הבושן הארץ האורל בגבולויס ארץ אביב. And Moshe Rabbeinu then, after hearing them pledge that they're going to do exactly what they're supposed to do, what does he do? He gives them the lands of Og, Sichon and Og. Very fertile land, wonderful for pasture. There's lots and lots of it, plenty of space. That's what he gives them. Anybody here paying attention? Nah, no, you're not. Because if you were, you would have asked a very, very basic question over here. Let's go back to verse number 33. Vayiten lehem Moshe livnei Gad v'livnei Reuven v'lachatzi shevet Menashe.
Why Menashe?
He gave to the tribes of Gad and the tribes of Reuven and half of the tribe of Menashe. Where did they come from?
I was going to ask.
Paying attention? No. You hear the problem? Up until now, who are the only players? Who have they been? Reuven and Gad, nobody else. We have no indication whatsoever that Menashe is involved over here. We have no indication whatsoever that Menashe is a part of the dialogue, that he's a part of this partnership over here. You know why? Because he's not. The tribe of Menashe has nothing whatsoever to do with what's going on over here. And boom, all of a sudden, what does Moshe Rabbeinu do? Out of nowhere. He says, okay, here's what we're going to do, guys. Tribe of Gad, you can stay on the other side of the Jordan. Tribe of Reuven, you can stay on the other side of the Jordan. Oh, and half of Shevet Menashe can stay on the other side of the Jordan as well.
They must have asked, which I see.
No, they didn't. Here, so you're looking at the Ramban, right? So the Ramban over here says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked if anybody was interested in staying on the other side of the Jordan. They said they'd like to stay over as well. But the emes is like this. According to Chazal, there's the most incredible dimension over here. I want you to understand this very well. It's something very, very subtle, but if you ask me, it's something reasonably disturbing. Are you ready to be disturbed? Good. Okay, here we go. Menashe, the original Menashe, who is he? The son of Yosef, right? Ephraim and Menashe were the two sons of Yosef that were born before the famine began and before he rose to prominence and took over the ruling of the country of Egypt. And Ephraim and Menashe were the ones who, when Yaakov and the brothers came down, when the brothers came down, when they came down, they were involved in the whole story of what went on. I don't know if you remember the story, but the brothers came down in order to look for Yosef. Yosef accuses them of spying. They don't know who he is. And he says they're not, and then he sends them back with their grain, and then they come back again because they've run out of food again. And the next time they come back with Binyamin, and what happens over there? Yosef puts his special silver goblet inside the bag of the grain that was given to Binyamin, and after they've left, he then sends Menashe to go and bring them back and say, one of you has stolen my master's cup. And they have a look, they find it in Binyamin's bag. The brothers tear their clothing in despair, and they get back on their donkeys and they go back to Egypt. And that's where the final confrontation is supposed to take place between Yosef and his brothers. In the end, it kind of fizzles out because Yosef can't control himself and he reveals his identity to them. Say Chazal, say the sages, listen to this. When Menashe went to the brothers and he told them that someone had stolen the cup, and he started going through their bags and he finds the cup inside of Binyamin's bag, the verses say, what did the brothers do? They tore their clothing in despair, and then they went back to Egypt to go and speak with with Yosef. Every action that we do here in this world has a spiritual repercussion to it. Every action that we do has to be paid back somehow, in some form. Whether it's good, whether it's bad. Whether we are doing it for the right reasons and it causes a little bit of sorrow, or whether we're doing it for the wrong reasons and it causes a little bit of good. Every single thing that we do here in this world is going to have repercussions. Now, they tell a story about a very famous rabbi and an Egged bus driver who die on the same day. And they both get upstairs and they're looking through their files, and this completely non-religious bus driver is given the most incredible welcome over there in the spiritual realms, and he's got this beautiful position over there, and he's given all kinds of honor he's given over there. And this famous rabbi, that's fine, okay, you know what, they look through this, you know what, come on in, we'll find you something. So you can imagine this famous rabbi is a little bit peeved, right? So he grabs a hold of one of the angels and he says to him, listen, he said, I don't understand. He says, I spent my entire life teaching Torah to the whole, to everybody who would listen to it. And this fellow over here, the bus driver, he didn't even keep anything. So he said, are you kidding? When you got up to speak, so what did all the people listening to you, what did they do? They went to sleep. He says, when this guy got behind the driver's wheel, what did everybody in his bus start doing? They started praying. He's got a lot of merits that he's accrued over there, merits that you don't have. Every action has got a dimension to it. It's got some kind of a repercussion to it. Explain the sages the most incredible idea. Menashe went and he went through those sacks and he found inside of Binyamin's bag, he found the cup. And what did the brothers do? They tore their clothing out of pain and anguish and sorrow, and then they went back to Egypt. Say the sages that act has got to be repaid somehow. You hear? Even though he did everything he did it because his father told him to do it, but nevertheless it caused sorrow, it caused anguish to the brothers. So now something's got to be done in order to pay them back. Menashe caused them to tear their clothing. So what happens to Menashe? Menashe is torn in half. One half is put on one side of the Jordan River, and one half is put on the other side inside of Eretz Yisrael. I think that's pretty terrifying. I really do. Everything we do, it's all being recorded, it's all being stored away, and at some point everything's got to be paid back somehow. However, I saw once a very beautiful idea, which I think is something. I think it's got a most incredible dimension of MS to it. What is the biggest concern over here is what? By having Gad and Reuven on the other side of the Jordan River, we're talking about a physical barrier between the two, right? We've got the rest of the Jewish people in the land of Israel proper, and we've got Gad and Asher on the other side of the Jordan River with the river running between the two of them. Jordan River's a pretty big thing, right? Which means that we've got a physical, a border between the two. What's the problem with that? The problem is, the concern is what? That at some point the tribes of Gad and the tribes of Reuven will become, they'll feel, disenfranchised. They'll feel detached from the rest of the Jewish people. And at some point what will happen? They'll end up distancing themselves spiritually and emotionally as well as physically. And that'll be a disaster, right?
But that's their own doing.
It's their own doing, but it's not good for the Jewish people. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He took half of Shevet Menashe and he placed them on the other side of the Jordan. When you've got half of your tribe on one side and half of the tribe on the other side, what are you making sure? That the connection will always be there. You've got Mishpacha on the other side, right? You've got cousins over there, you may have aunts and uncles over there, you may even have brothers over there, right? Which means that Moshe Rabbeinu is doing his best to make sure that even though Gad and Asher are being detached from the Jewish people physically, that they should never be detached emotionally, spiritually, and in the other dimensions, in order to make sure that there's always going to be that connection. Where's that going to come through? That's going to come through the half of the tribe of Menashe. That's why it's got to be half a tribe. Right? Half of the tribe is going to go on one side, half of the tribe is going to go on the other side in order to make sure that connection is always there. And it's Menashe because that's paying back the action that Menashe made all those years prior when he caused the brothers to tear their clothing. Good. Okay, we're going to stop over here.
Why would Menashe be punished for something?
It's interesting, it's not a punishment. I think there's a very interesting thing over here, something very important over here. The Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, the late Rosh Hashiva in the Mir, he says like this: there are repercussions to your actions which have got nothing to do with punishment. Right? The example that he gives is somebody puts his hand into a fire, they burn their hand. That's not, God's not punishing the person. That's just a natural repercussion of what you've just done, right? Over here, when they did what they did, there is now a repercussion. It's not a punishment. It's something which needs to be taken care of. Quite the opposite. The truth of the matter is that they should be happy that it's happening now, and not something that's going to happen in the spiritual realms instead. Good. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Mitzvah, I'm going to take this as stunned silence. Is that
That's
acceptable? Right. Good. Okay.
Kaya.
To be continued in Mitzvah.